course, the last year, we've been teaching online using Google Classroom and Google Meet rather than Zoom, which has obviously impacted the students' approach to the class and approach to kind of the teacher and approach to each other as well. So what I've noticed, sorry, is that slide moving? Oh, sorry, wait, okay, I've got it. So just to give you some background, our students are adult learners, typically Spanish and Portuguese speakers living in Ireland. When I conducted this kind of research, I was teaching intermediates, but I've changed to upper intermediate now, and I'm starting to use this program similarly there. So what we noticed with online teaching is that materials like reading and sharing, videos and all this online content is much easier, and it's really increased. What's decreased is speaking and kind of verbal interaction. It's very easy in an online class to sort of just hide at the back of the digital classroom and go unnoticed. And that has kind of the social impact, but it also has this kind of physical impact. There's muscle memory involved in speaking, and that has to be developed and grown, and it can also weaken. I used the analogy here of I'm right-handed, and I gave myself a minute. I set a minute alarm on my phone. I put a pen into my left hand, and I wrote the title of my presentation. And it took me the solid minute to get this one sentence out. And I still forgot the S in journals, but it illustrates that, like, if right-handed is my L1, then left-handed is like my L2. It's going to be weaker if I don't practice it. It'll never be as good as my dominant language, my dominant hand, but we can certainly do better than this. Gabby looked at this yesterday and she thought a 5-year-old had presented it or produced it. So that's what we need to do. We need to get them to speak somehow, even if they're speaking to themselves, I think. So what I did was I've introduced this in every lesson. The start of every lesson I do, I present this screenshot or this slide on a spoken journal. So the students, I get 2 questions. They're opinion or experience based, and they have to speak, record, and then listen to that recording. They can choose how much detail they put into their answer. They can talk for 10 minutes if they want, but what's really important is that they listen to it themselves. They can share it with me if they want, they can share it with each other, but it's really about self-awareness. So for example, question 1 here, do you believe you have a healthy diet? And the why is where the detail comes in. That's what's really going to make the answer longer than just yes, no. The second question is obviously very specific to Dublin, Ireland. This is true in the last 10 years, burritos have exploded somehow. And you might kind of think, well, how is a Brazilian going to answer this? But they have an opinion on it. They'll have an educated guess. And one student even did a bit of digging and shared an article with me from an Irish newspaper, kind of theorizing why this happened. So it does give them an opportunity to give their opinions and their experience. But again, they're going to be listening back to it, and they'll notice mistakes. They'll notice, oh, I'm repeating the same words over and over again. Oh, I always forget this word. I always mispronounce that word. My EDs aren't correct. My advanced ed EDs. So every class will begin with a slide similar to this. And at the end of the class, I'll also maybe prompt them, oh, what were the 2 questions that I asked you? One was to do with burritos. One was to do with your health. Now, they can use an app on their phone. I think WhatsApp has a voice recorder as well. Or there is this website called Vocaroo, which is very easy to use. It will produce a URL that you could share, or just an MP3 file that you can keep in a little folder. So I recommend the website just because I use it a lot. Now, for stronger students, maybe good intermediates and upper intermediates, of course, you can just give them the questions. But maybe if you're teaching beginners, elementary, maybe pre-intermediate, they won't have the bank of vocabulary to answer the questions, to give their opinions the way they want to. But you still need them to get that speaking experience so you can get them to read aloud. You could give them a text, either from the textbook or something that you've used in the past, and you can give them the text and they'll read that and record themselves. I recommend this website here, if you might be familiar, News and Levels. It produces the same kind of article in 3 levels of difficulty. Um, but it also provides a YouTube video of somebody reading the audio. So they can produce their own recording. They can check it. Oh, that doesn't really sound right, but I can't quite place what's wrong with it. Then they can listen to the audio and learn from that as well. Now, something I forgot to mention as well, if they record themselves and they notice a mistake, don't delete it. You have to keep it. Never delete it, because it's not a test. It's all about self-awareness and realizing, oh, I made that mistake. I'm not going to make it next time. So students are always saying, oh, but it was bad, teacher. It was terrible. Like, good. Just keep it, and you'll know better the next time. You'll know better tomorrow. Now, I've surveyed the students. I ran this for a couple of months, and then I surveyed them to see how often are they doing it, how often are they interacting with it. And typically, as you see up here, students, they don't do it every day, and they don't need to do it every day, I don't think. 3 days a week seems to be enough. And then how often are they actually re-listening? Are they listening back to the old comments? Again, I don't think you need to listen to all of your audios every day, but maybe if you do it 3 times a week and you listen back to all of them on the Friday, or maybe on the Monday, you'd listen to last week's recordings. I think that would be a good rate of engagement. As I said, it's about self-awareness. So these are things that the students themselves noticed, the mistakes they're making, pronunciation. If you don't notice a mistake, you're probably not going to fix it. And one that I've often noticed is they forget to say the it, especially with Spanish and Portuguese speakers. They'll leave out the it in a sentence. Or sometimes they'll double it. They'll have 2 subjects, like the house, it is big. So really, if they can notice that mistake, they have a much better chance of correcting that mistake. And as well, how's it helped them over here? Formulating sentences in my mind before recording and re-recording. Now, again, here I would recommend, re-record it, but don't delete the old one. Keep that. And as well, this probably helps with planning for even writing. You have to plan an essay. You have to formulate, what am I going to say? How am I going to present it? So, like I said, they don't have to do it every day. They don't have to re-record it every day, but it is something you could use or present every day as an option. Or the 2 questions can be used as a kind of a warm-up to the class, just to get people talking. And of course, then you'll remind them at the end of the lesson, oh, what were those 2 questions? You can have maybe somebody would be more comfortable answering then in class, and they've had more time to think about it, and they'll be maybe more likely to engage and record their answers after the lesson. Now, as some of you might have noticed, this survey only got 5 responses. Now, I have more than 5 students, and this is one thing that Gabby also mentioned to me in an email. Getting them to actually do it is the trouble. Getting them to, because they think it sounds silly or they hate the sound of their own voice. It's a very uncomfortable position, listening to your own voice. And if you're not used to keeping a diary in any form, then you're just less likely to give it a go. But the students who did give it a go, they all said it was helpful. It was beneficial. beneficial. But, and I'd love to get some of your ideas. How do you convince students to actually try this, to take 30 seconds, a minute, just to record their own voice and answer 2 questions a few times a week? So that's me. That's all of my presentation.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you,
All right.
Ian.
So I'll stop sharing here. There.
All right. There you go. So we do have a few questions from the audience. So the first one is, can you set up a profile and save recordings in files and folders under different people's names?
Uh, do you mean for students sharing their answer with me?
Yes, I think that was the question, wasn't it? I
What?
don't remember who wrote
So
them. Christine, yeah,
if
Christine.
if I have it right, students have shared their recordings with me in the past. They tend to just email the link that is produced on Vocaru, or they'll maybe send me the file, and I'll listen to it, and I'll notice, oh, there's this pronunciation problem here, or there's this maybe a little bit of a grammar issue there, but typically they tend to just keep it themselves. They I'd say only about 4 or 5 students have ever actually asked me, "Oh, will you listen to this and tell me if it's okay?"
Brilliant. And one last question. So, for the teachers who would like to give it a try, for the ones who haven't tried it yet, what would you recommend? What would be the first thing they should be prepared to do?
Well, when I'm making the 2 questions for the day, it's always related to either something we've been talking about in class, or maybe the topic of the day in the textbook that we're covering at the time. So it maybe the confidence you build throughout the class would encourage them to, as you said, give it a go, and then they'll have kind of semi answered the question maybe in the course of the class.